On 19 May 1944, at 14:35, Lieutenant Commander Walton B. Pendleton watched the sea erupt ahead of us, England. The destroyer escort's fifth Hedgehog attack had struck Japanese submarine I-16. A massive underwater explosion lifted England's fantail. I-16 disappeared with all 107 aboard. One small escort had done the impossible. And this was only the beginning. In 12 days, one American ship would sink 6 Japanese submarines, an unmatched World War II anti-submarine record. The victory did not come from strength alone. It came from making intelligence, sonar, and disciplined attack runs work as one system. The name in the water before the explosions. There was a name. England was not named for a battle, a weapon, or a victory. She carried the name of Ensign John Charles England, who had been killed during the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on 7 December 1941. The ship was launched on 26 September 1943 and commissioned on 10 December, with Commander Walton B. Pendleton in command. She was a Buckley-class destroyer escort. Her displacement was 1,400 tons. Her crew numbered 186. She was built to escort, to screen, and to protect. She was not a battleship. She did not carry the weight of a major fleet unit. Her importance came from a different kind of power, the ability to find what could not be seen and to attack what was trying not to be found. That distinction mattered in the Pacific, where a submarine could remain beneath the surface while its danger moved unseen through the water. The submarine did not need to appear powerful. It only needed to remain hidden long enough to act. In May 1944, Japan's submarine force seemed to possess that advantage. The boats were experienced. They were armed. They were trained to evade surface hunters through radical maneuvers. 7 Japanese submarines had been placed along a reconnaissance line called NA. They were waiting for the movement of American forces. The line was meant to make the sea dangerous before the enemy could be clearly seen. It turned distance into uncertainty. It made every report incomplete and every contact temporary. But the line had a weakness. Its submarines had been assigned specific positions. The sea was wide. Their places were not. The first crack on 13 May 1944, Fleet Radio Unit Pacific, known as FRUPOC, intercepted a transmission from Japanese submarine 16. The message gave an estimated time of arrival off Bougainville in the Solomon Islands, 2200 on 22 May. The information moved through the American command structure. It was passed through the 3rd Fleet to Commander Hamilton Haines, the commander of Escort Division 39 at Tulagi. Haines ordered a 3-ship hunter-killer group to get underway. The group included US George, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Fred W. Just, US Raby, commanded by Lieutenant Commander James Scott, and US England, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Walton B. Pendleton. Haines embarked in George as officer in tactical command. All 3 ships departed Purvis Bay on 18 May. The word hunter-killer described the purpose, but not the uncertainty. The group knew that a submarine was expected. It did not know exactly where the submarine would be when the search began. The transmission provided a direction, a time, and a chance. That same day, other radio intelligence revealed that Japan was establishing the 7 submarine line between the Admiralty Islands, north of New Guinea, and Truk in the central Pacific Caroline Islands. Japanese planners expected American carriers to pass through it. They were preparing for a decisive battle in defense of the perimeter that included the Marianas, the Western Carolines, and Western New Guinea. They believed they were placing submarines in the path of an approaching force. They did not yet know that the path itself had become evidence. The Japanese 6th Fleet directed the submarines to establish the line. Then, an American aircraft reported contact with RO-104. In response, the Sixth Fleet ordered the entire NA line to move 60 nautical miles to the southeast. The order included specific positions. FRUPAC intercepted that message too. The Joint Intelligence Center Pacific Ocean Area, known as JICPOA, worked to break out the coordinates. The information was sanitized, meaning it was prepared so it could be used without revealing how it had been obtained. It was passed through the Third Fleet and then to the escort squadron commander. This was the first time a similar process had been used for American anti-submarine forces in the Pacific. In each case, the Japanese submarines were found within 50 miles, and often less, of where the intelligence said they would be. But intelligence could put a ship near the danger. It could not make the final attack. The weapon that looked ahead England's most important weapon in the coming hunt was the Mark X Hedgehog. It was an anti-submarine mortar that fired an elliptical spread of 24 projectiles up to 200 or 300 yards ahead of the ship. The weapon worked differently from depth charges. Depth charges exploded behind or beneath the attacking ship, and their blasts could temporarily destroy the sonar picture. Hedgehog projectiles used contact fuses. They detonated when they struck the submarine. That difference changed the attack. With depth charges, the hunter could lose the sound of the target in the violence of its own weapon. With Hedgehog, the ship could keep the sonar contact while the projectiles went forward. The weapon did not simply throw explosives into the water. It extended the ship's attack beyond its bow while preserving the information needed to aim. The principle was simple. The execution was not. A submerged submarine could turn sharply. It could change depth. It could attempt to break the sonar solution before the attack run reached its end. The Hedgehog did not guarantee a hit. It demanded timing, control, and a crew that could repeat the process under pressure. England carried the design of a destroyer escort, but the mission ahead asked her to become something more precise. She would have to search like an instrument, maneuver like a trap, and attack without losing the target in the explosion. Remember that detail. The weapon fired ahead, and the sonar picture remained alive. That would matter when the first submarine began to run. The fifth attack on 19 May, an Allied aircraft sighted 116 on the surface north of Bougainville. England gained sonar contact. The submarine had been found, but contact was not victory. Beneath the surface, I-16 began to evade. England made attack runs. The first did not finish the hunt. The second did not finish it. The third did not finish it. The fourth did not finish it. The submarine remained a moving problem inside a dark sea. The ship had to hold the contact long enough to build another solution, then bring the Hedgehog into the correct position. Each attempt carried the possibility of losing the target. Each failure made the next run more important. England's fifth attack achieved solid hits. At 14:35 on 19 May 1944, the water broke with a massive underwater explosion. The blast lifted England's fantail. I-16 was lost with all 107 hands. The first submarine was gone. The ship had not won easily. It had persisted through 4 unsuccessful attacks and then made the 5th count. For the crew, the explosion was proof that the system could work. For the Japanese, it was the first warning that the sea around the NA line was no longer empty space. It was being searched by ships that knew where to look. England did not yet know the record was beginning. The second contact on 22 May, US George gained radar contact on RO-106 at 0351. England joined the attack. RO-106 was forced to dive, and the problem changed from a visible contact into a sonar chase. George's role was important. The group was working together, but the final kill still depended on the ship that could create the correct attack solution. England made a Hedgehog attack. It missed. The first failure did not end the engagement. It narrowed it. England made a second Hedgehog attack. At least 3 projectiles struck RO-106. The submarine was lost with all 49 hands. 2 submarines had now been sunk in 3 days. The interval mattered. The attacks were not separated by months of preparation. They came as a continuing sequence, and each contact demanded that the crew retain the same discipline after the previous explosion. A successful attack could create confidence. It could also create overconfidence. The ship could not assume that the next target would behave like the last one. Sonar had to begin again. The attack run had to begin again. The sea did not reward memory, but the Japanese submarine line was giving the Americans something more valuable than repetition. It was giving them positions. The third hunt on 23 May, RO-104 was sighted. The submarine was located about 250 nautical miles north-northwest of Caviang, New Ireland. US Raby and US George entered the action, but England carried the decisive attack. England began 2 Hedgehog runs. The first did not produce the kill. The second attack struck with 10 to 12 projectiles. 13 depth charges followed. RO-104 was lost with all 58 hands. The attack showed the difference between contact and destruction. The submarine had been detected. The first run had failed. The crew had to return to the problem without mistaking the failure for defeat. The ship's work was not dramatic in the way a single gunshot could be dramatic. It was measured in bearings, movement, timing, and another approach. The tension lived in the space between knowing the target was there and proving that it could not escape. England was learning what the enemy's advantage looked like from inside the hunt. The submarine's invisibility was not absolute. It depended on the hunter losing contact, losing patience, or attacking without a stable solution. You do not fight it the way it wants to be fought. A submarine wanted the surface ship to search blindly. It wanted distance, confusion, and time. England's method denied each of those things. Intelligence shortened the search. Sonar maintained the contact. Hedgehog carried the attack forward without erasing the picture, but the next submarine would require more than 2 runs. The fourth submarine on 24 May, England located RO-116 about 225 nautical miles north-northwest of Caviang. The submarine was now another point in the sequence, another submerged target inside the sea corridor Japan had tried to use as a shield. England made 2 aborted Hedgehog attack runs. Neither produced the final solution. The crew had to continue circling the problem, holding the contact, and waiting for an attack position that could be trusted. The third run was the one that mattered. England hit RO-116 with at least 3 projectiles. The submarine was lost with all 56 hands. This was the 4th submarine in 6 days. The record was growing, but the hunt still had no guarantee. An attack could be aborted. A weapon could miss. A submarine could survive long enough to force the surface ship to begin again. The important change was not that every attack succeeded immediately. The change was that a missed attack no longer broke the method. England returned to the sonar contact. The ship kept the target inside the process. The Hedgehog remained ready. The crew did not need one perfect moment. It needed another usable one. That was hope, but it was not triumph. Hope meant the enemy could be hurt. Confidence would mean the enemy could be understood. The 5th contact on 26 May, US Raby gained radar contact on RO-108 at 2303. The submarine was about 110 nautical miles northeast of Seadler Harbor, Manus Island. England also gained radar contact before RO-108 dove and began evasive action. The submarine was moving. The escorts were working together. The water was dark, and the target was beneath it. Raby was directed into the attack first, but its Hedgehog attack missed. England then took the contact. The ship began its run. This time, the first Hedgehog attack hit with 4 to 6 projectiles. RO-108 went down with all 53 hands. 5 submarines had now been destroyed. The dates formed a hard rhythm: 19 May, 22 May, 23 May, 24 May, 26 May. The gaps between them were short enough to feel like continuation, but long enough for the crew to understand that every new target remained dangerous. England had not become invulnerable. The ship had become reliable. That distinction was the heart of the rising confidence. The crew knew that a first attack could miss. They knew the submarine would evade. They knew an aborted run did not mean the hunt was over. They had seen the method survive failure. But 5 was not 6. The open loop the promise planted at the beginning now came closer. One ship had already sunk 5 submarines. The 6th would decide whether the pattern was history or legend. England needed Hedgehog depth charges and time to continue. She replenished at Manus. Then she returned to action on 31 May, joining 4 other ships in the attack on RO-105 near the Admiralty Islands. The final engagement carried a different pressure. The earlier attacks had shown what England could do when she held the contact and secured the attack run. This time, other ships were also present, and the submarine had another chance to survive inside the confusion. RO-105 had sortied from Saipan. It was now the last target in England's sequence. The ship had already passed through the first contact, the second attack, the third run, and the difficult days between them. The question was no longer whether England could find a submarine. Intelligence had already made that possible. The question was whether the method could hold under the final pressure. Hit subscribe right now, because what happens next is the biggest moment of the hunt, the moment that closes the record. Do not go anywhere. The last blast the ships attacked RO-105. Other attacks missed. The submarine remained beneath the surface, where the enemy's advantage was supposed to be strongest. The water concealed the boat, but it could not erase the sonar solution. England continued the work that had begun with I-16, hold the contact, make the run, and place the Hedgehog ahead of the ship. Then England attacked. The result was a massive underwater blast. RO-105 was lost with all 55 hands. The 6th submarine had been sunk. The operation had run from 19 May to 31 May 1944. In 12 days, England had hunted down and sunk I-16, RO-106, RO-104, RO-116, RO-108, and RO-105. The record was now complete. It had not been a single lucky strike. I-16 had survived 4 attacks before the 5th succeeded. RO-106 fell only after England's second attack. RO-104 required a second Hedgehog run. RO-116 survived 2 aborted runs before the third attack hit. RO-108 was struck on England's first attack after Raby missed. RO-105 fell after other ships had missed, and England produced the final blast. The pattern was visible in the failures as much as in the victories. England's success came from a chain that remained intact. Radio intelligence helped place the ships near the submarines. Sonar kept the submerged target within the attack. The Hedgehog projected contact-fused explosives forward while preserving the sonar picture. The crew repeated the process after misses, evasive maneuvers, and aborted runs. The enemy had seemed unbeatable because it could disappear. England defeated that advantage by refusing to attack blindly. The record that remained the Navy awarded England a Presidential Unit Citation. Lieutenant Commander Walton B. Pendleton received a Navy Cross for the 6 submarines sunk. The Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Ernest J. King, gave the achievement a sentence that carried the name forward: "There'll always be an England in the United States Navy." The promise was fulfilled on 6 October 1960, when DL-22 was assigned the name England. The name continued after the destroyer escort's record had passed into history. The first England's own war was not finished in May 1944. On 9 May 1945, while on station, she was attacked by 3 Japanese dive bombers. Her anti-aircraft fire set the first plane on fire, but the aircraft crashed into England's starboard side below the bridge. Its bomb exploded just after the crash. England's crew fought the fires and tried to save the ship. Combat Air Patrol shot down the other 2 attackers. The ship reached Caramaretto under tow, with 37 men killed or missing and 25 wounded. That callback matters. The ship that had hunted submarines with controlled attacks later endured an attack aimed at its nerve center. The sea had not become safe. The enemy's edge had not vanished from the world, but England's crew still applied the same principle: recognize the danger, preserve control, and keep the ship alive. She went to Leyte for temporary repairs and then reached Philadelphia on 16 July 1945. Permanent repairs and conversion to a high-speed transport began, but the end of the war halted the work. England was decommissioned on 15 October 1945 and sold on 26 November 1946. Her wartime service earned a Presidential Unit Citation and 10 battle stars. The answer beneath the title: So, how did one destroyer escort hunt 6 submarines in 12 days? It began with a vulnerability in the enemy's plan. The Japanese submarines had been placed along a line with specific positions. Radio intelligence exposed the movement of that line. The American task group used the information to search where the submarines were likely to be, not where the ocean merely allowed them to be. Then the ship used sonar to keep the target present. It used the Mark 10 Hedgehog to attack ahead of the bow. Because the projectiles used contact fuses, the weapon could strike without turning the sea into a wall of sound that erased the next moment. And when the first attack failed, England did not mistake failure for impossibility. She attacked again. That was the quiet answer to the opening dread. The submarine looked unbeatable because it controlled the terms of the fight. It could hide, evade, and wait. England changed those terms. She brought intelligence to the search, sonar to the darkness, and repetition to the attack. The record was not made by one extraordinary explosion. It was made by a method that kept working. The first blast lifted England's fantail on 19 May. The last blast ended RO 105 on 31 May. Between them stood 6 names, 6 dates, and a crew that continued after the target disappeared beneath the water. England did not yet know the record was beginning. By the end, the sea had answered. The lesson is simple. The decisive weapon is often the system that makes the weapon find its target. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because every week we tell you how America actually won its war. If this story stayed with you, leave a like and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'll see you in the next one.